Point of View is powered by Airtel Tigo Extra. Even our bonus data doesn't expire. You dey feel am? Dial *111# to activate now. Airtel Tigo. Life is simple. And Lydia Contraceptive. With Lydia, you truly decide.
Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we get the right guests most of the time. We ask them the right questions all the time, and we hopefully get good answers for you. Every now and again, we do editorials. Every now and again, we do intellectual work. Tonight, we're having a show where we'll be delving into a very controversial but interesting book. This is the book, Working with Rawlings. So I'm going to give you three things. I'm going to do a review of the book. Very interesting read, one of the most exciting books I've read this year. Then we would talk to the man. We've actually spoken to the man on City twice. I've interviewed him. Samens has also interviewed him. We'll bring you excerpts of those interviews. And then we'll also hear from people who have issues with the book. So that's going to be the show for tonight. Now, I'll tell you how to get the book. And those of you who have seen or read and want to comment, please feel free. It's a live show. So get in touch on the WhatsApp number on the screen. If you're watching on any of the social media platforms, let's keep it decent. Let's talk about Ghana's political history. Let's talk about some of the issues that have come up. I'll be right back with more. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Point of View. Tonight is a special night. We're reviewing a book, the Kwamena Ahwoi's book, Working with Rawlings. And I'm told the book is almost running out because a lot of people have been calling, asking where to get the book. I don't know whether it was just the controversy. I suspect the interview Samens had with Kwamena Bartels, and Samens is the MD of City FM and host of Samens is the host of Footprints. And he interviewed Kwamena Ahwoi on Footprints. On Saturday, there will be a replay of Footprints. If you're watching this show in the afternoon, immediately after this show, but if you're watching in the evening, then I'll show you where to get it. So what am I going to do tonight? First, I'm going to review the book for you. Now, a good review is like a mini skirt. It must be short enough to be interesting, but long enough to cover the basic parts. So that's what I'm going to do. It's not going to be too long. I'll tell you some of my key observations. I'll show you who the characters are in the book without giving you too much detail. And then I'll tell you 5 observations I made in the book. Then we'll look at some criticisms of the work. And then I would also look at some of the controversies that have been generated by the book. You'll also hear from the man himself. So we have 2 interviews with him. I interviewed him exactly a week ago today on City Breakfast Show. I haven't read the book on the Saturday before. And he has some interesting things to say about why he wrote the book. I'll do that. I'll bring you excerpts of that interview. And then the host of Footprints also interviewed him on some details in the book, including the infamous Arkaah incident, as well as the so-called resignation. Whether it was a full resignation or not, we'll find out. So that's the menu for the night. So before we proceed, I need to say a couple of things. History is always human. History is conflictual. History is never straight. And history can lead to lots of arguments. So what I will urge us to do is to get a book and read it, and then we can form conclusions. The fact that it's controversial is not a bad thing. I'm very happy that my generation has had the likes of this book, Hilal Iman's biography by Adam, and that's a book you must get. It's a fascinating read. I haven't read the whole thing, just started reading it a few days ago. So it's a good book to get. Whereas Samuel's Political History of Ghana is also a good book to get. You need to get those books to understand where we've come from as a country. So this deals with 78, 79, 80. Then Obed's book starts from 51 till 2015-ish. And then this one starts from the 70s. So let's start with who is in the book. Now, I have 4 groups. The first group are the main characters. There are 3 main characters in this book. Your guess is as good as mine. The first one is Chairman Rawlings. Chairman Rawlings evolves in about 7 iterations in the book. Starts as the revolutionary, brave, handsome soldier, 79, prepared to die for his men. Gives a nice talk on May 15 after his political attempts to take over the country. Then he becomes head of state and chairman of PNDC. And all of this is in the book. Then he transitions in 93 to become a democratically elected president. Now, this same Rawlings is also a campaign machine because in those election years, he transitioned from being a dictator to somebody who knew how to appeal to the people. Rawlings is also, of course, the boom speech giver because in opposition, he would become infamous for his boom speeches against Kufuor in particular and later on against Atta Mills. He also, in the book, is portrayed as a victim of Kufuor's harassment because the author spends a lot of time talking about the chaotic transition and what happens in the first 4 years of the Kufuor government, how Rawlings' privileges were stripped, how he had to go to Commodore Mensah's airport shell as his unofficial VVIP lounge. All of that is in the book, fascinating. But Rawlings hasn't ended. He also talks about Rawlings as the chief tormentor for Mills. He's portrayed as a tormentor-in-chief for former President Mills. And then, of course, in the last bits, the author is very intimate in talking about his own disappointment with Rawlings, from the revolutionary to the great leader to the traitor. And then use a very unflattering word at the end. I won't tell you that word. You need to get the book. The word starts with M. It's a huge word. But so it's 7 iterations of Rawlings. Second person is Nana Kwamena Rawlings, former First Lady. I describe her as the invisible hand in the book because, of course, there are direct quotes of what she does. There are specific things she says to both the author and people in the book. But it's very clear. She's very powerful. Now, there's a very interesting quote in one of the pages where she essentially says to the author to tell Totobi Kwachi that I've struggled for all these years to rid my husband from the clutches of PVOB and Captain Chikata. I will not have he, Totobi Kwachi, take over my husband. Well, this is in relation to control. So I call it the invisible hand throughout the book. Fascinating character. One of the most effective first ladies we've ever had. I think one of the most effective first ladies anywhere in the world. It's not even in Ghana. Articulate, determined. But she's portrayed as very ambitious and she's not cast in very positive terms. And of course, the third person in the book is the man on the right. The man, Professor Mills. Now, I feel that the author, in trying to portray the goodness of Mills, I think he inadvertently portrays him as a bit weak because there's a lot of times where he makes a decision and he did this. And in fact, there's a part of the interview the author has with Samens that will prove this, that he wanted to resign. He calls the author that I want to resign, and then the author says, you've not made the right decision. So it was a bit chaotic there. Then let's talk about the minor characters. So these are the 3 major characters in the book. You will find these 3 people in the book, throughout the book. They're everywhere in the book. Okay. I even asked the author whether this book is about Mills. He says it's not about Mills, but Mills is heavily prominent. Here are your minor characters. Dr. Kwesi Botwe is very strong in there, particularly in his 2002 attempt to take over or to be the NDC flag bearer from Mills. He's portrayed, interestingly, as if misguided by Obed Asamoah, almost. Because in an interview with the author, he basically says he underestimated the popularity of Mills. So Kwesi Botwe is a minor character in the book. Mahama is in the book throughout, but this book is not really about Mahama. So even though former President Mahama is there, it's not really about him. The man on my right, Obed Asamoah, I consider him, I think in the PNDC, NDC, either the second or third most powerful or certainly most influential man in that whole architecture of our Fourth Republic. Fascinating character. There's a specific part of the book where the author takes Obed Asamoah on, and I will show you that excerpt, where the author actually describes as false something Dr. Asamoah writes in his own book. So it's an interesting character who features prominently in the book. Even though he's not a major character in the book, he features prominently. The 2 gentlemen in the bottom right are, of course, the siblings. I have a prize for the person who can guess who's the oldest of the 3 and the youngest of the 3. So it turns out that Kwamena Ahwoi is the oldest. He's on the right. Served as Minister for Fuel and Power. He served as head of the Revenue Board. Very influential brain. Then there's Kwesi Ahwoi, former ambassador to South Africa, former Minister for Agric, former GIPC boss, who's actually older. So Kwamena is the last of the 3 Ahwois. Of course, there are about 5 ladies as well. We'll find that in the book. There's also their lovely mother. And then, of course, there's Mahama Idrisu. At least Mahama Idrisu is one of those people. He's silent, but he's always there. You can't write the history of Ghana without Mahama Idrisu. Unbelievable character. He's always been there. Either running for chairmanship, running for flag bearer, head of national security, minister for various portfolios for defense. He's somebody we should talk to. I hope Samens gets him on Footprints. Very, very interesting guy. Now, let me go to the 6 reviewers. Now, this is very important because the people that the author chooses to review the book reveals things about his mind and his relationships. Here are the 6. Surprise, surprise, Professor Jenana Opoku-Agyeman. Let me read what the author says. She features in this book twice. There's a page and a half on her about her interview prowess prior to the election in 96. But in the acknowledgements, the author says, Professor Jenana Opoku-Agyeman, Minister of Education under John Mahama, Ghana's first female VC of a public university, did a young woman's job at reading through the entire manuscript and reviewing the content, paying particular attention to editorial and grammatical detail. She claims that the manuscript was her education on politics, and I'm grateful that she adjudged it publishable. I also thank Professor Nana for graciously accepting to write the foreword of this book. So she did the editorial work. That reveals something. Don't forget that one of the Ahwois owns Radio Gold. She hosted programs on Radio Gold. So there's some association there. Then, interestingly, Dr. Kojo Afarijan also reviewed the book. And one of the fascinating things you'll find is how Afarijan was discovered at a drinking spot not far from Achimota. Unbelievable. But Afarijan also reviews the book, especially on the Constitution's Committee on Experts part, and also parts of the work done by the EC. So it reveals the relationship there. Now, a lot of people have said this book is controversial and could attract suits. Now, I doubt if any suit against this book will be possible. You know why? Because Chikata, a legal luminary and a law lecturer in jurisprudence, who taught the author, is the one who read the book and reviewed it for its legal cogence. So essentially, let me read what the author says. The author says, Chikata helped me particularly in the area of any possible infractions of defamation laws and for factual accuracy and linguistic correctness. I owe him a debt of gratitude. Chachu is one of the most formidable lawyers in this country. If Chachu says your book is kosher, it is kosher. So it also reveals some of the relationship there. So I find it fascinating that Mr. Chachu's review was on possible infractions of defamation laws and for factual accuracy. So whoever wants to sue the author, good luck to you. You'll be suing him after Chachu has reviewed the book. There are 2 other reviewers there. Nana Atudazi, he's also one of those who are always there. Nana Atudazi is a bit like Mahama Idrisu, Chief of Staff under Rawlings. Very interesting character. I consider one of the bridges for the various NDC camps, but I'll come to that later. He's one of the bridges in the various NDC camps. He works with everybody. Very interesting guy. Then, of course, there's Kofi Totobi-Kwachi, more on Totobi-Kwachi later, because I put him under a different set. Apart from reviewing the book, of course, there's also the author's wife, Mrs. Comfort Na Lomocho Ahwoi. We searched for her picture everywhere. We couldn't find it. And I think that says a lot about the Ahwois, that the 3 of them, prominent in government, there are no pictures of their wives anywhere. I haven't seen any. We searched. We couldn't find the author's wife's picture anywhere. And I think the author did a good job in commending. He mentions her throughout some of his sensitive meetings. Clearly acknowledges her wisdom and support, but we didn't see her picture. Maybe it's for personal reasons. But that was quite interesting. Of course, there's Totobi Kwachi. Now, there are 3 people in this book who are, I call them the protagonists, okay? The author himself, I call them in fact, they call themselves the Gang of 3. I didn't call them. This is the Gang of 3. Now, who is Kojo Chikata? If you don't know Kojo Chikata, your history is very poor. So, a member of the PNDC was responsible for foreign affairs and national security in the NDC government. In the PNDC, and NDC was national security advisor. The famous Bablaja. I think that of all the people who work with Rawlings, he's the most respected and possibly the most revered. I think so. I mean, it's very clear. From if you take from Rawlings' 79 all the way to today, I think he's the most respected. And every important decision that the author had to take, every difficult problem the government faced or the party faced, Chikata was there to solve it. I've never heard him grant an interview. It would be nice for him to talk. We don't know if he will ever talk. But you will see him in the book. If you read the book, you will see him in every chapter. Now, I think the second person you will see in that set of people close to the author in resolving difficult situations is the man in the middle. He started out as a, of course, student leader. Then he became a deputy secretary for information. And then later on, a minister for information. And then minister for national security. Almost like having understudied Chikata. Very important decisions in this country. All controversies, he's there with the two of them. Very interesting deal. So as I was saying, in the rankings of people who work with Rawlings, I think Chikata is probably the most feared and respected. And then possibly Obeda Samoa is the most intellectually formidable. Those are my views. Okay, I will go to Rawlings' kitchen cabinet later. Let me leave that. I have his kitchen cabinet, but we are not yet there. What I'm going to do now is to talk about a few surprises I had reading the book. So I got this book on Friday afternoon, and by Saturday evening I was done, because it's pretty interesting. Let me talk to you about 4 surprises I encountered in reading the book. The first surprise was that the author started as an interviewer at the age of 28 in 1979. That gives you a clue about how he was born. He interviewed 8 people, including the great Victor Owusu, the revered, articulate, political pioneer, Victor Owusu, the uncle of Charles Reku Broby. He interviewed Victor Owusu at the age of 28. Now, that endeared me to the author, because at 28, I was also doing interviews. He even interviews Rawlings after the 79 coup. So this guy started out as a journalist. That means there's a lot of hope for we in the media. That was the first thing that I found surprising. Number 2, he plays Scrabble. How did I know? Well, this book is a lot about Legon's intellectuals. So do you know how he got to do the interviews? Well, he used to play Scrabble on weekends with Professor Avana Mensa to while away their time. And Adai Mensa was the one selected to interview the 8 presidential candidates for the 78 election. But Adai Mensa, as this blue book I have here shows, later became the general secretary of Liman's party, the PMP. And this is how come he wrote this book, which a book you must get. Now, because of once Adai Mensa becomes Liman's party's general secretary, he can't do the interviews anymore. So he's looking for somebody smart to do the interview for him, and he picks Kwamena Ahwoi, 28-year-old, formidable Scrabble player, law lecturer, Rhodes Scholar from Oxford, to do the interviews. So the author plays Scrabble. I found that quite interesting. Then, of course, there are a few more things I found interesting about this book. I've already mentioned the youngest of the Ahwois. The size of his hair, amazing. There's a photo they took whilst they were in China. They were all wearing Afro-Moses and they had big hair. Very interesting. Okay, now let's go into my observations. This is actually the key thing I want to say today, my observations about the book. The first thing I noticed is that the level of detail is quite impressive. I wondered, and I wish I had asked him this during my interview with him, were you actually journaling throughout your years as a minister? How did you get all the details? I mean, for example, if you go to Discovery of Males, page 118, the level of details, including quotation marks, is unbelievable. I mean, he was talking to Obeda Samoa about how they should make Mills the vice president. They had like 3 days to file. And the level of detail in the book is incredible. This is how he talks about how he got to do the interviews. His affiliation with Mills, how they got to fill. So essentially, Harry Sawyer is a minister for education. Adai Mensa wins the VC of Legon, beats Mills by a point. This is the time I'm entering Legon, around that period or in the 90s. They then said, the guy who lost, this is 96 actually, this is secondary school. The guy who lost to Adai Mensa is a friend of ours. Then they said, maybe he'll be the guy for vice president. So don't forget, Rawlings had a big fight with Arkaah So Arkaah cannot be vice president in 96 election. The level of detail is incredible. And he shares the story, with quotation marks. How Obed Asamoah picks up the phone and speaks for about 8 minutes to Rawlings in Ewe. He records all that. And how Obed goes to meet Rawlings with him and they send him to go and talk to Mills. How he goes with his wife, spends 4 hours convincing Mills. Mills says he will not do it. Then they drive to Adenta to Ahwoi's house. And Ahwoi, the master, gets Mills to agree. The level of this is incredible. So it's not just broad brush strokes. It's actually very good details. Second observation, the stories are juicy. Gosh. Page 85, how Afarijan was discovered. So they are setting up a committee of eminent persons to think of a constitution for Ghana to move into democracy. He's going to look for Dr. Dra of Political Science Department. He branches to a drinking spot near Achimota Forest, where he and some of the Legon people go and drink. He sees Afarijan sitting there, and they are drinking and chatting. And Afarijan is talking about Kwame Nkrumah. The author is so excited, he calls Captain Chikata and says, Charlie, I've met a guy. He's younger than Dra. He's wild. He's the guy for the job. So he discovers Afarijan in a drinking spot. They were not drunk. They were all sober. They just talked. It was very powerful. Now, the other juicy story is something that's been making us on social media. Page 198. I loved it. Now, I was wondering what hall Kwamena Ahwoi attended. But when I read page 198, I concluded that he was a vandal. And I'll tell you why. I'll read some excerpt for you, page 198. This one, please indulge me to read it. And author, please don't criticize me too much. So he describes Bid Ziedeng as a rabid Obed Asamoah supporter, and by extension, an anti-Mills person. This was known to President Rawlings. On the Congress Day, Bid and other party members formed a human chain on the 2 sides of the entrance of the Congress Hall to provide a kind of protection to the VVIPs. The crowd was very thick, and it was not easy to see whatever was happening at the entrance. As Bid tells it, when Rawlings and his entourage got to the entrance and the crowd surged forward to acknowledge their hero, Rawlings got hold of Bid's testicles and squeezed them hard. So hard that he believes he fainted. When Bid recovered, he was outside the Congress Hall and the people were fanning him. Those people did not know what had happened. They only knew he had fainted. Now let me come down. When I confronted President Rawlings, he only burst out laughing and said, I should have squeezed them harder. Within the small circle of the NDC leadership who had knowledge of this incident, it was referred to in harsh tones as the Abobo Ntoshe affair, or Abobo Ntoshe, or Abobo, the crusher of testicles affair. Kwamena Ahwoi is a big man. So look for the Abobo Ntoshe affair. On the Abobo Ntoshe affair note, I'll take a short break. When I come back, I'll walk you through my 3 other observations about the book. Then I'm going to take you to the author himself. I spoke to him. He'll tell me why he wrote the book and some of the things he said. We'll also bring you some key excerpts. Then we'll read some very serious criticisms because Rawlings is not happy. We also have Dan Abodakpi not happy. Some of those guys, we hear from them. This is the point of view. We are reviewing Working with Rawlings, written by Kwamena Ahwoi. We'll be right back.
Extra. To get extra. Be extra with Airtel Tigo's new call and data bundles. Live extra only on Airtel Tigo.
Dial *111# now.
Airtel Tigo. Life is simple.
There are those with untold stories, unraveled feats, life-changing stories, and lasting legacies. They tell their stories themselves on footprints.
I didn't hear let him go. I heard come and take him. They took me to another room. There was this muscle man with the cane ready. With 12 canes. Pa! Then I told myself I won't yield. So I kept my teeth together. Pow, pow. I mean, heavy canes.
Lecturer at KNUST.
Lecturer, very popular lecturer, based in KNUST, being whipped by heart by a soldier who,
Be inspired by their hard work and resilience that led to their outstanding achievements as we trace their footsteps through time.
But I was able to set a record at Apollo.
Wow.
Because Apollo is a place that, it's not only one act.
Yeah, of course.
So when you perform one song, you need to leave for the next act to come. I was able to do 2 songs at a go.
Wow.
Because when I was performing, all of a sudden, about 3 African-American girls, they jump on the stage, started to do my song thing with me. Then the whole, hey, everybody, hey. Then when we finished the music, then I said, do you want more? They said, yeah. Then I looked at the face of the promoter. He couldn't do nothing. He said, okay, go ahead. Then I put in the Simgodu, because my first what I did was this song that you hear at Brent said. That's what I did. After that, I put in the Simgodu. Man.
So join me, Samuel Atamensa, and my guests every Saturday at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. for Footprints, only on City TV.
Footprint is sponsored by Bethel Logistics Company Limited, experts in shipping logistics.
Welcome to The Point of View. Today we are reviewing a book written by Kwamena Ahwoi, Minister of Local Government for 12 years under Rawlings. It's a book that's generated a lot of controversy. We're doing an editorial review. We would also hear from the man in various parts. We've interviewed him on both radio and television. Then we would also hear from those who have criticized the book and said that it is a misrepresentation. Now, I have 6 observations. First one was that the book has an impressive level of detail. We've also said that the book is laced with interesting anecdotes and stories. I think the biggest thing in this book is point number 3. Doesn't shy away from controversy. Page 116, I think, 115, he deals with the Arkaah issue. Arkaah was the stubborn cat, they called him. It was an uneasy presidential relationship. He doesn't avoid it. He goes into it. He tackles it headlong. And in fact, in an interview we had with him, he goes into further detail. That's very important. Obed Asamoah on Mills, he takes on Obed. Page 144, he quotes Obed's political history of Ghana. And that part of the book is interesting because Obed had said in that book that after the Soweto Declaration, he noticed that Ato Ahwoi, Kwamena Ahwoi, and Totobi Kwati were ecstatic after Rawlings' unilateral anointing of Mills. And Obed said that when he saw the 3 grinning and being elated at lunch, he suspected they knew something about the declaration. He refutes that in his book. He says, no, Obed, you are wrong. Nothing could be far from the truth. We were equally as surprised as you were about the announcement. So he doesn't shy away from controversy at all, which is very interesting. Mills nearly resigned, page 210. Wow, to put that in a book, that's serious. Because no media house reported it. Yet it happened. Page 210. In fact, the president resigned. And if in the interview with Samensi, he actually says, and yes, me. So in the book, he says Mills nearly resigns. In the interview, he says the man resigned. So Ghana, your sitting president actually resigned at the time because of Rawlings' incessant attacks on him. And he says, Rawlings, or say Mayan. That's a very common phrase in the book. So it's very clear that the speeches Rawlings gave in Mills' presidency 2009 to 2012 really affected the man to the point where he actually wanted to resign. I thought that was very serious. And there are many more. There's the Michael Susidis affair. There's all kinds of things. The Jemima Yale affair. Look, every major controversy the Chronicle reported on, Chronicle was the leading newspaper in those days, he deals with it. So even though the book is less than 400 pages, it is loaded with controversy, which is why I think a lot of people want to even get it to read. In fact, some of the parts that have generated response, for example, Abu Dhabi, there were some interesting points where he quotes Mr. Abu Dhabi. Mr. Abu Dhabi responds, and I'll read the response to you. It's in the book. Now, let me do 3 more points. There are 3 more things I noticed about the book, apart from the controversies. I think in terms of style, the seamless transitions between politics to policy, I think is fascinating. He essentially will move from how they were trying to solve the problem in Sierra Leone or Liberia or Gambia to how people are jostling for power in the PNDC, NDC era, and how almost all the coup makers in West Africa admired Rawlings, to how they are thinking about decentralization and putting. It's a seamless transition from politics to policy, from formal to informal as well. So he's quoting things he did at the UN. He spent a year as foreign minister, and then he comes to informal language, describing Abubo Ntoshe in the same chapter. That duality is amazing. I think the best chapter was chapter 7. In chapter 7, he deals with how his mother wanted to have Rawlings at her 80th birthday party. In the same chapter. So in that first incident, Rawlings is such a great, graceful person with his wife. The Ahwoi's mother is so happy to see Rawlings. Rawlings is graceful. It's a beautiful ceremony. She's 80 years old. In the same chapter, he talks about how Rawlings tries to convince Ato Ahwoi to run against Mills. In the same chapter. I thought that transition is very interesting. Very few people can do that. To move from Rawlings as the darling to Rawlings as the traitor in the same sort of book is quite interesting. And also his transition from broad brushstrokes to tiny details. He will give you specific details about policies. So it's a political science material as well. Decentralization. If you want to understand decentralization, this book will help you. It tells you the mind, how Ghana's constitution came to be written, the chief architects. There are details there. And of course, some of the issues about Rawlings' reluctance or he wasn't so sure about the democratic experiment is also there. From sacred to the secular. So I think that duality is very important. The transitions are very interesting. And then a final 2 points, multiple citations. Now, I think that one of the most interesting things I saw in the book was that for one particular issue, the author quotes 20 people. I don't know why that was so important to the author, but you will find it in the book. There's a particular incident in trying to answer the question of why Rawlings and Mills fell out, or in trying to answer the question, what at all happened between Rawlings and Mills. He quotes 20 people. That's just incredible. This is incredible. Page 199 to page 209, he quotes all kinds of people. I mean, he quotes Ambassador Kwesi Ahwoi, his brother. He quotes John Mahama, Kwame Pepra, Nana Atudazi, Kwesi Botwe. 20 people. That's very interesting. And then, of course, the book is an eclectic work. So, he quotes Okujetua Blackwell, he quotes Omani Boama, he quotes all kinds of people. Ambassador Chega, Victor Mate Newman. 20 people to make 1 point. I've never seen that before. 20 people to make 1 point. Now, even though let me not say he quotes, he sources them, he cites them, because one of the criticisms of the book is that, if for example, if you read the Dan Abu Dhabi part, he attributes things to people and in some instances doesn't directly quote them. And that ran him into some problems, which is why, for example, the Abu Dhabi issue comes up, where Mr. Abu Dhabi says, number one, you said I was minister under Mahama. It's not true. I was minister, or I was a ambassador at the time under Mills. So Abu Dhabi corrects him in the part. This is page 201. So I think one of the problems is that because he's trying to cite so many people, he can't remember everything they said. So he's attributing stories to them, some of which they can disprove. So let me read, for example, Abu Dhabi says, Rawlings is Minister for Trade and Tourism and High Commissioner at Malaysia under President Mahama, is under President Mills. Ambassador Dan Budakpi expressed similar sentiments. He blames Rawlings' hostile attitude to Mills on the overambition of Nana Konadu, whom he accuses of seeing Mills as a rival, who had usurped her legitimate entitlement to leadership of the NDC. Now, this is problematic because you don't quote the guy, but you're attributing something to him. And in trying to cite 20 people, you're bound to run into such problems. So that was one of the problems he faced in the book. Let's look at some other criticisms he faces. Now, these criticisms are not all mine, but a lot of the NDC people I've spoken to have criticized a few things. There are 4 main criticisms. The first one is that the man is trying hard to denigrate Rawlings. Because, in fact, he starts by elevating Rawlings, and by the time he's done with Rawlings, you say, hey, Rawlings, is that how he is? So it's not surprising that the Rawlings camp is not happy with the book. Now, this is what people are saying. This is what some people are criticizing the book for. They say he's trying to denigrate Rawlings' legacy because he uses some very unpalatable words. He actually publishes an open letter written in 2011, and it's quite serious. Some people think that we have an election in December. Why are you releasing this book now? What are you trying to achieve? Why are you trying to give NPP ammunition? What are you doing? Why are you washing NDC's dirty linen in public? Some people criticize him for that. The other argument is that, well, he obviously wrote this book long before this election came up and probably only had to release it because of COVID now. So you can't say he's trying to influence the election. But there are some people who think that this book doesn't help the NDC because it opens old wounds. So this is not a criticism of the style, it's a criticism of the timing. So it's more the context. Now, some people have also said that he tries to paint the Ahwois too good. He tries to paint the Ahwois as too good. So, in fact, somebody said to me, he's trying to sanitize the Ahwois image. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know the image needed sanitizing. So, for those of you in the NDC, you know this better than I do. You need to explain that to your people. Why some of the NDC members feel this is an attempt to sanitize the Ahwois image. And then there are some who say that he arrogates too much importance to himself. It's not because the government is a very complicated thing. So the fact that Rawlings tells you something doesn't mean he's not telling other people. So the author presents himself like some all-knowing, hard-working technocrat, whereas he was only a part of the story. That's what some people say. Let's listen to what he said to me when I interviewed him. So exactly a week ago today, I called him up on radio, and I asked him why he wrote the book, what he was trying to achieve. And here are some of the points he made to me in the interview I had with him. How long have you been thinking of doing this?
Actually, not too long. The idea came to me when I was writing the biography of Professor President Mills together with Koko Nyido. And I realized that the story of Mills was so interlinked with Rawlings that it would be unfair for me to write about Mills without first writing about Rawlings, because I had worked first with Rawlings before Mills. So while the Mills book was with the printers, I set out to write this one. Most of the material was already contained in the Mills book, and so it was not too difficult to put this out first, even before the Mills biography comes out.
Wow. I vacillated between thinking of this as some sort of biography of yourself, but also more about the Rawlings, because even though you are in the story, a lot of it is about your reflection on what happened in the Rawlings years. Do you consider this to be an autobiography?
No, it's not an autobiography, and it's not a biography of Mills. It is a description of my working relationship with Rawlings, and in the process of describing that working relationship, the political history of Ghana between 79 and I think 2010 gets told.
And it's interesting because up until this book, Obera Samuel's book had been the main reference point for that period. Did you see this as filling some of the gaps in Obet's book at all?
No, this is an independent work. Obet's book, because of the length and also the period it covers from about 1951 to about 2010 or thereabouts, it's very difficult for many people to read. You really must be interested in reading before you are able to go through it. It's over 600 pages. This is a short, precise account of the Rawlings period between 1979 how I got involved, and then the period when both of us exited government, in the short period after government that we found ourselves in opposition. So it's a complementary story to Ubed, but it does not fill in any gaps that Ubed must have left behind.
but I noticed that you made a point to correct, because in Ubed's book he says that when the Swedish Declaration was made, he saw the Ahwoi brothers and Totobi essentially so excited, and he knew that came from there. You took some time to correct that, didn't you?
Yes, I did, because it was untrue. You see, we were as surprised by the declaration as he himself must have been. And he knew Rawlings as well as we did. So why he could think that Rawlings could not do something like that without our involvement, I found very surprising. If he was not involved, how could we have been involved? And the truth of the matter is that we were not involved, we did not know, and we were very surprised when the declaration was made.
No, it's a juicy part of the story I went to first when I took the book. But I need to just ask a couple of quick questions around it. A lot of people will not know that you were actually a broadcaster for some time, that you actually hosted presidential candidates for the 79 election at the age of 28. That was an incredible discovery for me.
Yes, there are many things about me that people do not know. For example, many people do not know that even long before then, in 1971, I was actually working at the Daily Graphic and writing Daily Graphic editorials and feature stories for them. When I was in the university at the time, and they used to send me themes for me to write on. So I worked with the likes of Elizabeth Ohene, Ben Akiu, I forgot the name, Ben something, then Ben Mensah, Nana Daniels. My history with the media goes back a long way. But
no, that was encouraging, because for those who started broadcasting young, it tells us that there's a lot of work to do. A couple of things, though. You were doing so much in the Rawlings government. At some point, you were both local government and foreign minister. I mean, and you were very young as well. That must have been very challenging.
It was challenging physically, but not mentally. Physically, because, as local government minister, you would find yourself in Bumbuku today, attending to a district assembly. Then you have to rush back. In the night, you have to fly to Geneva or to New York or to some other, international capital to attend to foreign policy matters. So that physical exertion was challenging. But the mental switch from local government to foreign affairs, for me, was not very, very difficult.
As a journalist reading the book, I couldn't help but say that a lot of the things we speculated in the media had some truth. Because, for example, this Rawlings lobbying Ahwoi to contest Mills, it was fairly speculated in the news media, but nobody actually courageously wrote about it in full. But you spill the beans in this book quite fully.
Yes, it was rumored within NDC circles, but those of us who were directly involved, we never really spoke about it. But for me, it was, as I've indicated in the book, it was one of the low points in the relationship between myself and President Rawlings, because I didn't expect him to do something like that, knowing the relationship that existed between ourselves and Professor Mills at the time. So if I was writing about working with Rawlings, it was an important part of the relationship that had to come out. So as you're saying, I wasn't really spelling a secret. I was confirming an event.
So that was a week ago. I was talking to Kwamena Ahwoi. I would later ask him if he would invite Rawlings to the book launch. And he actually said he did invite Rawlings. And he wouldn't be surprised if he turned up or did not turn up. But we don't know if he turns up. Now, there are two very important facts in this book that he elaborates on in our Footprints interview. I'm going to show you the first one now. And this has to do with the Arkaah incident. So we had a very interesting situation where a vice president of a government was the running mate for the opposition at the same time. So the interviewer asks the author to elaborate on this, because even though he mentions it in the book, he doesn't go into that much detail. So this is a quick excerpt of that Arkaah affair.
Ghanaians Ghanaian opinion leaders, I think we were very happy that it was happening to Jerry, because here you had a situation where the vice president of the ruling government was also the vice presidential candidate of the opposition party. And he was attending cabinet meetings and making governance impossible. You know.
Is that why Rawlings beat him?
He didn't beat him.
He gave him a blow.
No, he didn't give him a blow. I was at that cabinet meeting.
But he tore his
He didn't
clothes.
tear his coat. He did not. You were not. I was there. There was a
his clothes got torn.
Do you want to listen to an eyewitness account, or you want to substitute, imagination? There was an incident. Both of them fell on the ground.
Between the two of them?
Yes, but Commodore Steve Obimpe, who is a military person, he had been Navy commander, he was seated next to Arkaah. He very, very quickly jumped into the fray, separated them
from fighting.
Yes, and Arkaah left. His coat was not torn.
It was strange.
Yes.
That's very strange.
We also saw a picture in which his coat was torn.
Okay.
But when he was leaving the cabinet,
it wasn't torn. Then that's very strange.
Yes.
In fact, that's very wicked.
Because he went to the IGP to report that he had been assaulted by President Rawlings.
I was there.
Yes.
I was at the Cantonment police station where he came with a torn coat.
Yes, he needed evidence. And what better evidence than a torn coat? I don't know how it
Somebody
happened.
must have done it.
But I am telling you that the incident was of such a nature that his coat could not have been torn.
But that's a pity.
And when he was leaving, his coat was not torn.
Wow.
But it is true that there was an incident. Anyway, so as a result of that, we had to look for a running mate for
And that was how come they found Mills. And of course, he narrates a story. I won't give you all the details. When I come back, I have another quick excerpt from, this one is very interesting, the Mills' resignation. And that's a conversation we had. And then I have two very serious criticisms. In fact, Dan Abodakwi has written, as has Rawlings. I'm going to read for you what they are saying, all before we close. This is the point of view. Send us your comments. We'll be right back.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
Okay, welcome back to The Point of View. We're trying to review this book. I'm told it's almost running out. And we haven't received any money for the book. We are just excited about a good book because it gives a chance for a lot of people to read about our history. And I've already said that history is human history is social, history is conflictual, and history is changeable. So other people can write and correct the wrongs in the book. And I've always said, you don't read only one book. You read this book, read Obeta Samoa, read Kevin Shillington, read Michael Quay, put them together and get a picture. All of us have one side of the story. Only God has the full side. So this is the Ahwoi side. There's the Okwei side. Then there's the other two sides. Now, there's a very important thing he says in the book, which he doesn't elaborate on, which our interview with him on Footprints brings out. And I want to show that to you. Our President Mills actually resigned. He wrote the letter, was packing out of the castle, but a phone call to Kwamena Ahwoi changed all that. Watch it.
Didn't you hear about Atta Mortuary Man?
No, that was a Mortuary Man's reference.
Do you think that it was just for another thing that he told that story? And the Konongo Kaya, do you know what Konongo Kaya means?
With this particular reference, no, I don't. I know Konongo Kaya generally, but with reference to Atta Mills.
The man's name was Atta.
Atta the Mortuary Man.
Yes, Atta Mortuary Man.
Who born dog?
Who used to dress people nicely when their bodies were brought to Tete Kwashi, and he himself, nobody was very sure what was going to happen to him when he died.
Wow.
And then Konongo Kaya, the man, he's not well, so he cannot govern. He won't leave it for somebody else to come and do it. I mean, all kinds of innuendos,
Yeah.
And
so that's actually rather deepened the cracks.
Yes, because as I have explained, there was one particular incident which caused President Mills nearly to resign. In fact, he resigned. The only thing that saved this country...
As president?
Yes. The only thing that saved this country was that he called to tell me that he was resigning. And
he spoke in Fanti?
Yes, we used to. What's Majai?
Majai?
I was in Ebri. I was at an IA workshop at Ebri. He said, Kwamena, at the Jericho Kikenwo Tamalina, because people have to speak English.
No, feel free.
Have you heard what Jerry has gone to say about me in Tamale? I said, no, I haven't heard. He said, get the audio and listen to it, because I have resigned and I don't want anybody to try to stop me. Yes. And I said, Mr. President, I believe that you have resigned. You have decided to resign. But I also believe that you are not sure you have taken the right decision. You want a second opinion. Otherwise, you wouldn't have called to tell me.
Correct.
I would have heard about it in the media. So please, can you let me consult my gang? That's how I put it. He said, okay. So I called Captain Chikata, and he said I should arrange for us to go and see him. And then I should bring him to Tubikwache. So on a Sunday evening, we went to the castle.
Uncle didn't go.
No, he didn't. There were some, there are different issues, different conspirators. So we went, and he had actually packed his things, his suitcases, everything, ready to go.
Oh, you mean he was...
So that was fascinating stuff. Now, if you're watching this show on Tuesday, right after this program, there will be a full playback of the Footprints interview with Kwamena Ahwoi, so you can get the full interview. Now, let me do two things. There have been reactions. For former President Rawlings' Facebook page, there's been a Facebook post. It's a 3-paragraph post. The bottom paragraph deals with this issue. So I'm going to just read that to you. It says, much as I find it tiring and tedious to be engaging in self-defense when I have given my all these years, I will soon deal with the callous agenda of bile by the likes of Kwamena Ahwoi, who are desperately seeking control of the NDC party. The NDC could, should, and has survived on the authority of the word. But if care is not taken, it will collapse and drown, as has been happening on the word of those in authority. This is former President Jerry Rawlings' Facebook post. It was a post that started by talking about congratulations of the VC of Tech. By ends, a very serious. Look at the description. Now, this is not surprising because at the end of the book, Ahwoi really talks about how Rawlings' behavior and him changed. He actually describes the whole run against Mills by Ahwoi as the lowest moment. Right. Now, let's also see what Mr. Dana Bodakpi is saying. Dana Bodakpi is a former Minister for Trade, and he also ran for chairman of NDC in the recent election. He says, so it's a long letter, but let me just read the key part. It says, one such example of inaccuracy was incorrectly referencing my designation as High Commissioner to Malaysia under President John Mahama. Please be informed that I was High Commissioner under late Professor Mills and not President Mahama. Another utterly false representation is that with regards to my views on former First Lady Mrs. Rawlings and a decision to contest President Mills, I have always maintained that the decision of the former First Lady to contest Prof. Mills was not well thought through at the time and therefore was not prudent. However, I would never describe her in so derogatory a manner as has been done in the book. So there you have it, another very uncomplimentary comment. Now, I wanted to show you a few more things before we go, before I read your comments. So there's a few people you will discover in this book if you read it. You will discover Rawlings' kitchen cabinet for the NDC, PNDC, yes, he puts it in quotes in page 256. But I've already mentioned some of them. Captain Chikata, really one of the key people there. There's Ahwoi as well. Ahwoi, variously PNDC Secretary for Trade, National Revenue Secretariat, Minister for Fuel and Power. Very powerful. He's economics, mathematics, is the numbers and finance guy in the Ahwoi brothers. Then there's also P.V. Obing. He gets some mention. Indeed, P.V. Obing's resignation is actually spoken of, how he left the PNDC after some investigation. of course, the investigations followed stories written by Kofi Kumsin. I think one of the other invisible hands in the story is Kofi Kumsin, because the Chronicle gets a lot of the stories correct. So even though Kofi Kumsin is mentioned only in a few places as the enfant terrible of the Ghanaian media, Kofi Kumsin's journalism, I can say, has been vindicated by some of the things that he reveals here. But PV is part of the teaching cabinet. Kwame Pepra, Rawlings' classmate at Achimota School, close friend, Deputy PNDC Secretary for Transport and Communication, later became Minister for Transport, Forestry and Finance. And then, of course, they call him KTQ, Kofi Todobikwachi. Is like the smooth operator. Okay, and then, of course, the Ahwoi himself. Now, it's important to put all this people up because the argument the author makes is that Rawlings has fallen out with all these people. And the other people like Daniel Ohinie Jekum, Obeda Samoa, Cecilia Jones, all of them appear to have had a fallout with Rawlings. So the author's argument is that is it Rawlings who's been betrayed or is the one who's betraying them? Let me read some of your comments in closing. Good evening, Bernard. Was Rawlings given a chance to review the book? We are real Rawlings Orients, and we are waiting for our founder to react factually. We fear nothing, but only God. John Achu Kaketo Teshi. Good evening, Bernard. Please, can we find the book on Google Play Store? The book is an interesting one, and one must read it. You can go to www.booknook.store. Nana read Amo and Co. They will give you a copy. You can buy from there. Bernard, good evening. I'm Martin Hukwati from Pram Pram. I bought Professor Ahwoi's book today, and I must admit that there was a lot of interesting stuff in the book, which wasn't known to many. It was worth reading, though I'm not done. With the reactions from certain people like former President Rawlings, I think he shouldn't try to go harsh in order to counter statements made in the book, because there have been a lot of things said about him by top personalities in the country like Okubaku, but he hasn't really said his side of the story at all. I suggest he puts his own narrative in a book form or perhaps have a public lecture on these matters. This is from Martin Hukwati. Bernard, interestingly, in all these discoveries, they were not looking for foot soldiers but smart brains. This is the difference between politics then and now. This is from Babzi in Wa. Samuel Akofo, Jr. Apam. Good evening, Bernard. Good work done by Kwamena Ahwoi. I believe if the late Prof. Mills is alive, it will be interesting to hear his side of the story in his encounter. More comments. Mustafa Loa Manya Krobo. Good evening, Bernard. Which bookshop can I get a copy? This will be one of the best pre- and post-Fourth Republic political books. My regards to Honorable TLRB. Mustafa, I think most serious bookshops have the book, or you can go to the man's office. He says his office opposite Aquinas Secondary School. You get a copy. All right, so these are our perspectives as an editorial team on the book. We are not necessarily endorsing or disputing. We are saying it's a useful addition to the political discourse because history has many sides and it must be read with other material as well. But it's a welcome addition to the body of knowledge. We congratulate the Ahwoi. He says, he tells me in my interview with him that he's writing another book on the three Ahwois. I hope I get a copy. Thank you for watching tonight's edition of The Point of View. If you're watching this on Tuesday, stay tuned because there's going to be the Footprints interview with Mr. Ahwoi right after this. And try and get the book, buy it, so we can build the economy. My name is Bernard Avle. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.